Once again, you are heartily welcome on board the first edition of the program for the week. We start off with the first paper, that is Eden. Eden of Zach Zanganumbu for today talks on engulfed by insecurity, poor state of roads. Bamenda denizens blame elites in government for town's abandonment. That is the front page story you can read on Eden for today, and that story completes herself on page 10 on Eden of late Zach Zanganumbu for this morning. As Bia clocks 41 in past, senators may salute a great statesman. You can get to read the various perspectives from these politicians of the Fako division. We'll move over to Konye in Meme, where Konye DO wants government to create a military base in that part of his jurisdiction. You can find that story on page 5. Presentation of 3 years report cards. The paper talks of the population satisfied with Mayor Eposim Boye Florence of Limbe 1 Council. I would now take you from Limbe to Boya, this time around with a copy of the post. The post of late Francis Wache for this day says, Bia's Cameroons at 41, a sip of champagne for some, vinegar for others. That is what the post is telling us for this morning. And that sets the Post newspaper. The Post newspaper comes back to banditry, kidnappings render Bamenda denizens helpless. You can find that story from the Northwest region on page 4. Medical doctor, 2 nurses detained at Kondengi prison, temporary release. You can find that story on that said publication on the Post newspaper for this morning. From the Post, we take you now to the Guardian Post. The Guardian Post for this day says, Bia's 41 years in power, the good, the bad, the ugly. That is what the paper of Christian God tells us for this morning as late story. At sixth session of the International Solar Alliance Assembly in India, Minister Gaston Elundu Usomba markets Cameroon's energy potentials to foreign investors. We move over to enhance financial inclusion. He says premium Finance PLC launches Islamic microfinance unit. On their editorial, the Guardian Post for this day's editorial talks on Bias at 41 in power, succession still a mystery. You can find that story on Christian Gas publication of the Post, the Guardian Post. I beg your pardon. From the Guardian Post, we'll now take you to Newswatch. Newswatch of Eugene D says, after 41 years in power, calls gallows for 91-year-old Bia to seek re-election come 2025, as reported to us by Newswatch of Eugene D for this day. As budgetary session opens Friday, Luipo Motaze of Finance says 2024 budget to witness slight increase to that of 2023. Government adds 812 kilometers overhead cable to Camtel's fiber backbone. You can find that story on page 7. Fight against corruption, money laundering. UK consolidates position as global leader with new law. We'll wrap up with this one from the said paper. For arbitration dismissal, court orders Foods to pay Antonio Costa the sum of 1 billion CFA francs as damages or indemnity owed the former Indomitable Lions coach. We move now to the Herald Tribune. The Herald Tribune for this morning reports end of Senate solidarity. Africans delegates say homosexuality witchcraft. That is what you can find on the Herald Tribune newspaper for this morning. In Assets Herald Tribune, the paper reports on API partners relationships. It talks of total satisfaction. We move over to CPDM in Donga Mountain Division, section 4 of that set section in Messager in the Northwest region. The paper reports supporters declared President Paul Biya at joint section conference. We move over to Tom Fabrice Nico Hale, who dedicates twin awards to Konak Boss and Media Wall. You can get with that story on that said publication. Taking you now to the Horizon. The Horizon for this morning reports Northwest Regional Assembly execution rated at 71%. Limbe 1 Mayor Posim Boye Florence presents blue report cards in 3 years on the job. We'll take you to this other story that talks of Dr. Nkumbi. He says shining Shesha's trademark excellence in ophthalmology across the Central African sub-region. Let's wrap up with this one of the visit of the CPDM Secretary General Jean Kwete. He says Santa teaches peers grassroots mobilization. Get to read more on the pages of the Horizon newspaper for this morning. From the Horizon newspaper, we remain in Bamenda with the pilots. The pilot talks of iconic Northwest CPDM MP's mayor praise Paul Biya for his 41 years in power. We'll move over to Akere Muna on resolving the Anglophone problem. Let's take you to Bamenda. People dies meat admitted after consuming sachet substance. You can find that story from the newspaper from Bamenda. That is the pilot for this morning. From the pilot, we'll move over to the next publication for today. Lloyd Sahel of Gibe Baitama report on the Congress in Bafusam of 1980. It says the will of former President Amadu Ahijo. Get to read the will or wish of former President Ahijo of the Congress of the Cameroon Union Congress, known as the CNU. That's the former ruling political party in the country of the Bafusam Conclave in 1980. We'll move over to this locality in the northern region known as Poli. It talks of the festival of culture that is underway in Dowayo. You can find that story on that said paper for this morning. The Cameroon Medical Council convokes her election for December 9, 2023 after the signing of the Minister of Public Health, Manuela Malachi, who's now ushers in the elections that were suspended of the Cameroon Medical Council. We'll move over to Le Independent for today. Le Independent for today talks of Paul Biya, the mystic of power. That is what you can find on Le Independent for today, as Paul Biya clocks 41 at Cameroon Supreme Magistracy. Get to read that story on that said paper for today. The Yaoundé phenomenon of potholes and garbage heaps. The paper reports on the city mayor of Yaoundé is to be blamed for the disdemeanor of Yaoundé. Get to read that story on that set publication of L'Indépendant for this morning. From L'Indépendant, we'll move over to municipal updates for this day. Municipal update says Biya's 41 years at helm of state when destiny meets grace. That is what Victor Cham tells us on his publication of municipal updates for today. At 41st anniversary of the Supreme State Magistracy of President Paul Biya, Senator Ekoko Mokete salutes Paul Biya's strides. Get to read that story from the traditional ruler of the Bafor. Thousands in far north benefit from mass malaria campaign, as reported to us by municipal updates for this morning. We'll move away from municipal updates to the next publication for today to talk something else with the economic paper. Quotidian Economy for today talks on the bilateral relationship between the South Korea and Cameroon, precisely in the mining sector, as President Paul Biya receiving audience the Prime Minister of South Korea. Get to read that story on that set publication. We'll move over to this other story on the set publication of Quotidian Economy that reports on the increase of the exportation of Cameroon banana to the world market. You can find that story on that set publication for today. Let's take you now to potable water. It talks of BGFI Bank, Water, and CGNCO now comes together to provide water to some communities, some 9 communities in the country, as reported to us by Quotidian Economy for this morning. We move now to next door Douala to meet Mutation. Mutation reports on the energy sector. It says rage as Inyo keeps on giving Cameroonian blackout across the nation, as Cameroonians are in total rage with these persistent power outages across the nation. Get to read that story on Mutation of Thierry Diaka for this morning. We move over to good governance now. The paper reports on the proposition of La Francophonie to other African nations and Cameroon in particular when it comes to good governance in their various countries, as the La Francophonie Ministers Conference that just ended in Yaoundé says the insistent or the increase in coup d'etats is a result of bad governance across the member countries. Let's move away from Mutation of Thierry Diaga to Cameroon Tribune of Marie Claire Nana for this morning. Cameroon Tribune for this day says Unity Palace. It talks of the two guests that were received in audience by President Paul Biya. There you have the secretary or the director general of La Francophonie and this other special envoy that is Louis Mesheko Wabo of Rwanda nationality, and the other lady who was receiving audience by the President Paul Biya, supported to us by Marie Claire Nana's publication of Cameroon Tribune. New Day government at 41. It says part cover surmountable challenges ahead. Get to read that story on page 9 to 19 on Cameroon Tribune, the national bilingual daily for this morning. We'll move over to this other publication, Le Fort Camerounais, the Catholic publication that is still waxing strong. It talks of natural catastrophe. It says Cameroon needs to rehouse some citizens. You can find that story on the Catholic newspaper, Le Fort Camerounais for today. And that's a Catholic paper. The paper reports on the 2023 synod. It says Catholic Church not on fire. That is what you can find on that said publication of the Catholic Church for this morning. We'll move over to Dr. Lionel Kapshim. He says social police can curb on indecent dressing. I beg your pardon. You can find that story on that Catholic publication for this morning. La Meteo for this day talks of the renewable energy sector in the country. It says Start C now lays for the path for Cameroon in 2024 when it comes to renewable energy, as reported to us by La Meteo newspaper for this morning. From La Meteo, we now take you to Quotidien Emergence for today. It talks on electricity, why the persistent power outages that is witnessing across Cameroon, as reported to us by Quotidien Emergence for this morning. And as at Quotidien Emergence, the paper reports on entrepreneurship. It says Cameroon and Canada now discusses on how to boost small and medium-sized enterprises (SMS) in the country and to make sure Cameroonians are being entrepreneurial when it comes to economic activities. We'll move over to education, precisely in the Mayo Rona. It talks of the president of the Regional Council of the North Region, who comes out with scholarship to awards to this children or pupils and students of that locality in the North Region. Let's move away from that publication of Quotidien Emergence. We'll take you now to Midi Action. Midi Action reports on Banjul. It says, it talks on the people of culture. It says the 9th edition of the Festival of the People of Banjul will be taking place, has been launched, as many of them turn out for this cultural jamboree in Banjul town of the West Division of the country. We'll now move over to Confidential for today. Confidential reports on the New Day government. It says what will happen after Paul Biya. That is what Confidential tells us for today. Douala Clean City, the campaign that was launched by the city mayor of Douala, Roger Mbassadine. The paper reports on when Roger Mbassadine takes the bull by the horn when it comes to Douala, the Clean City campaign. Get to read that story on Confidential newspaper for this morning. From Confidential newspaper, we'll move over to The Nation. The Nation for today reports on why central bank must bring down inflation by Sanusi, who was one time the central bank governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Naira firm up will continue upcon predicts. You can find that story on that set paper. NLC Imo government crash over attack on Ajirios village. We'll move over to this other story that says give agriculture a priority. It talks of Carl Sudo. We are changing Apex Bank policy directives. Get to read that story from Nigeria. We remain with the Nigerian tabloids this time around with the Punch. The Punch for this day says off-season government gubernatorial polls. It says 220 police patrol vehicles deploy in Imo, Kogi, Bayelsa. These are states that will be witnessing gubernatorial election and other states electoral process. We now take you to Niger, Benue, and Kano. It says marketers hike fuel blame for transport costs. Moving over to cooking gas, scarcity hits Lagos State and Katsina and other states of Nigeria. Let's take you now to the sports paper. Punch Sports Extra for today says Monday's score on Sunday. You can find that sports story on the Punch Sports Extra for today. Hen wants Anthony Joshua Fury fight. We'll move over to this other story that talks of Shakur blows face in front purse in London derby. Well, let's take you to VAR decision embarrassing. That is what Arteta talks on that paper for today. Adesia worry over judges when it comes to the fights that he will be engaging into the days ahead. We'll move over to the next publication now. We'll come back to Cameroon with L'Avenir. L'Avenir for today talks of the resource center of application of our technical application when it comes to renewable energy that will be erected in the country in the days ahead after the renewable energy conference in India that was attended by Cameroon's Minister of Water and Energy Gaston Elundu Esomba. We'll move over to the subdivision of Banja. It talks of His Majesty Njumisi Chomko Jofin. It talks of the treasure of the new king. Get to read that story, or the new phone, I beg your pardon. Get to read that story on that set publication. Let them went for this morning report on the Lamidat of Marwa. It says Dr. Manauna Malashi has been raised to the a notable position from the Lamidat of Marwa, as reported to us by Letemwe newspaper for today. The cultural complex of Mondang Cheza, it talks of the new national bureau that prepares for this first part of the edifice. You can find that story on that said publication for this morning. We'll now move over to Eco Outlook. The environmental newspaper reports on plantain transformation factory to open in Bangem after festival. You can find that story on Eco Outlook of the Eco Outlook of Elias Ntogwe. We'll now move over to TAT. It says START launches second phase of innovation to transform agriculture in Africa. You can find that story on that Eco Outlook newspaper for this morning. Along women raise fund promote culture in Limbe 2023 come together. And this other story that talks of constitutional review golden jubilee preparations mark next Yaoundé AGM. We'll move away from that publication of Elias Togwe to the next paper we are having for this morning. We'll now take you now to the next publication, that is Innovation. Innovation talks of November 6 2023. It says Bayo, it talks of Abbasado who mobilizes militants of CPDM and for them to register for the upcoming elections that will be coming very soon. That is what you can read on that set publication on the set paper. Finance, the state of Cameroon disburses 98 billion CFA francs to pay some internal and external debts owed by the state of Cameroon, as reported to us by Innovation newspaper for this morning. From Innovation newspaper, we move over to Info Matin. Info Matin for today talks on the Paul Atsanganji, who says GBI security is in review. That is what the no-nonsense Minister Paul Atsanganji of the Territorial Administration talks on the pages of that said publication of Info Matin. We move over to the central region with Hebdomir Mesala. Hebdomir Mesala reports on Paul Biya who reinforces the rejoinder. You can find that story on that set paper. This one is talking on the fight against money laundering and financing for terrorism and other crimes in the country, as reported to us by Hebdomir Mesala newspaper for this morning. We'll take you to corruption. It says Andre Eyebe Aisi in another deep mess. Get to read that story on that set publication for today. Away from that, let's move over to Info Asho. Info Asho newspaper for this day talks of condemnation or the court verdict of the court for sports or with headquarters in Switzerland. It says Fecafoot needs to pay Conceição. You can find that story on that set publication of Info Asho for today. In that set Info Asho, the paper reports on the Presidential Republic Television, known as PRC, and CRTV. What's the difference? That is a big question that paper is asking for today, following the circulation of images of the PRC TV. That's the television, the presidential television channel, and CRTV. What's the difference? So we'll move away from Info Asho's publication. We'll take you now to the next paper for this morning. That is Le Jour of Hamad Mana talks of the Federal Court of Swiss, who now says Fecafoot needs to pay 1 billion CFA francs to former Indomitable Lions coach Antonio Conceição, as reported to us by Le Jour of Hamad Mana for today. Professional football, Dynamo now trashes Canon. You can find that story on that set publication of Le Jour for today. We'll take you to Echo du Parlement. Talks on the presidential elections for 2025. He says Massenyat Difenji mobilizes the population of the West region to stand firm behind President Paul Biya for 2025 presidential elections, as reported to us by Echo du Parlement for this morning. In that Echo du Parlement, the paper reports on this parliamentary exchange between Cameroonian parliamentarians and their peers from La Francophonie. You can find that story on that set publication on page 6 of Echo du Parlement newspaper for this morning. We move now to this other one, Le Quotidien Spécial for today reports on the mega meeting that has been announced to take place in Bangante, the chief town of the Day Division of the West region today, by the Minister Celestin Kecha Cortez. We'll move over to the 41st anniversary of President Paul Biya at the Supreme State Magistracy of Cameroon. It says the son of the New Deal government in the East region, or that's the piece that was written by Joseph Lay, senior journalist Joseph Lay, who doubles as Cameroon's Minister of Public Service and Administrative Reform. Get to read that story on Le Quotidien Spécial for this morning. From Le Quotidien Spécial, we'll move over to Ligne de Horizon. Ligne de Horizon for today says the opposition in Ituri, says Paul Biya against Paul Biya. That is what you can find on Ligne de Horizon newspaper for this morning. Away from Ligne de Horizon newspaper, we'll be moving over to the next publication, this time around with the hot paper, Quotidien Eco Santé. Quotidien Eco Santé talks on the calling of the elections of the Cameroon Medical Council that have been slated for the 9th of December 2023. Get to read that publication of Quotidien Eco Santé for this morning. Brain Week in Cameroon and Africa. It says Professor Roger Shafak receive Monokoso Muna Brain Lecture Award. Get to read that story on that publication of Quotidien Eco Santé for this morning. We remember the hot newspaper televiewers on High Television for this morning with this other excellence award prize of Quotidien Eco Santé, who distinguishes some outstanding medics across some hospitals in the country. You can find that story on that set publication for today. We move away from that publication. We now take you to the next paper for today. That is the next paper for today. We'll be moving over to Le Médiateur. Le Médiateur newspaper, Le Médiateur Info newspaper for today talks on Honorable Focho Jean-Claude offers this agronomy institute to his constituent in Ndonga. And just to reiterate, Ndonga is a town in the division of the West region. You can find that story on that set paper for this morning. We'll move over to road safety and the Yaoundé Express route that is yet to be launched, or to be yet to be inaugurated. The paper reports on the work done by the Minister of Public Works Emmanuel Ngano Njomisi. You can find that story on that set publication for today. Let's move over to Locan. Locan for today talks of when nonchalance meets Messi that kills the city of Yaoundé, making reference to the city mayor of Yaoundé, Luc Messi at Tangana, who the paper accuses of being the mastermind of the deplorable nature and dirtiness of the city of Yaoundé as potholes and abandoned roads and a lot of garbage heaps that now litter the city of Yaoundé. You can find that story on La Locan for today publication. We'll move over to the availability of potable water in the neighborhood of Etudi in Yaoundé. The paper reports on how Cam Water is sourcing for alternative water supply for inhabitants in the locality of Etudi in Yaoundé. You can find that story on La Locan for today. We'll move now to the next publication for this morning. We take you now to the Sun. The Sun of Nobed Waso from Limbe says Yaoundé Simalen Express Road urban section to cost the sum of 379.5 billion CFA francs. That is the Yaoundé Simalen Express Road urban section. You can find that story on the paper from Limbe of Nobed Waso for this morning. We will take you to Professor Mulwa Enes, who backs outstanding scientists in agriculture awards in Africa. You can find that story on that set paper. 3 years on the top job of Limbe 1 Council, it says Eposim Boye Florence counts positive report cards. You can find that celebration of the mayor of Limbe 1 Council, Eposim Boye Florence. Southwest Prudential Beneficial Life Insurance Board sheds light on recent deal with Basic Education Ministry. You can find that story from Norbert Wasso's newspaper of the Sun for today. We'll move now to this other publication for today, the paper of Paul, Reality Plus. Reality Plus for this day says Joseph Lay makes his best in the galvanization and mobilization of militants of the CPD and political party in the locality of Abongbang as they celebrate the 41st anniversary of President Paul Biya as the rise of Cameroon's magistracy. You can find that story on Paul's Reality Plus for today. We'll move over to Banjoni. It says the paper reports on the 9th edition of the Nsam Tajum Festival in Banjul. Get to read that story on that set publication of Paul's Reality Plus for this morning. Wrap up the program with the last publication we are having for today. Integration for today talks of the SEMA Commission. It says 150 days on the top job of the SEMA Commission of the new leaders that are taking charge of the various activity of that sub-regional bloc known as the Central African Bloc, known as CEMAC. We'll move over to Cameroon this time around with the pain accumulated